The gospel is altogether different. In religion, it's all about man's continued work. You know what the gospel says? The gospel says, with his last breaths, Jesus hung on the cross and shouted, "It is finished." Nothing left to add, nothing left to contribute, nothing left to do to earn or win or achieve your salvation. It's finished. It's done. The gospel has done it all, and you simply participate. You simply receive the finished work of Jesus. Religion is all about you. Here's what religion does. Religion makes a big deal of you and your work to your glory, and the gospel makes a big deal of Jesus' work for Jesus' glory. Religion makes much of you and little of Christ. The gospel makes much of Christ and little of you. Third, Jesus hates religion because religion is seeking the wrong goal. Jesus hates religion because religion is seeking the wrong goal. Religion uses God to get something else. In the verses we just read, what did the Pharisees do? They hang their phylacteries long. We won't get into that. They say their prayers in the public sphere. They love people calling them rabbi for everyone to hear. You know who was God on the Pharisees' lips? Yahweh. You know who was God on the Pharisees' heart? Human applause, human approval, human praise. And so here's what they were doing. They were using religion to get what they were really after. Freddie already preached this to you, so I won't repeat it, right? But that's the idea. Religion has this twisted, weird way of using God to get what you're really after. So you're really after success, and God is a means to an end. For the Pharisees, you're really after human applause, and you use religion to get there. Like when we see it done by the world, by those who don't believe, it's so obvious to us, right? When you walk through the supermarket and you see the magazine covers and you see women that are barely clothed, you see right through it. You know what it is. It's basically screaming to the world, look at me, tell me I'm beautiful, tell me I'm worth something. Right? It's all a ploy. You use your beauty, you use your gifts, you use your talents, your performance to somehow feel like you're worth something, to get someone to notice. And it's obvious to us. We see right through it. But here's the way religious people work. We would never be on a magazine cover. But what we will do is to make sure that our religion is seen for everyone so that they can look towards us. God becomes just a means to an end. And so maybe it's not human approval for you. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's success or health or wealth or a relationship or something. But here's the thing. When you don't get what you're after, when instead of health, you get disease, or when instead of success, you get failure, or instead of wealth, you get broke, you don't get into that college you're looking for, or whatever, you bounce from God. You leave him behind because he was never what this was about anyway. He was just a means to an end. The gospel is altogether different. Because you know what you get in the gospel? You get God. And that's all you've ever wanted, and that's all you ever need, and he is more than enough. It's not God to get me something else, it's I get God. And Jesus is my great treasure. It's not even that I get Jesus to get to heaven and save me from hell. It's that heaven is heaven because Jesus is there. And Jesus is all I've ever wanted, and Jesus is all I want. Jesus hates religion because religion uses God to get something else. Fourth, Jesus hates religion because religion keeps God's commands, but deep down hates them. Jesus hates religion because religion keeps God's commands, but deep down hates them. Look at verses 16 to 22. I won't read it for you, but Jesus is saying, woe to you, blind Pharisees, hypocrites, you religious leaders. And the reason is, he says, you guys say to people, if you make an oath on the temple, you don't have to keep it, but if you make it on the gold in the temple, you're stuck. Or if you make an oath on the altar, you don't have to keep it, but if you make it on the gift on the altar, you're stuck. And he says, woe to you. Okay, what's he saying? Jesus hates religion because religion keeps God's commands but hates them. So here's what the Pharisees were doing. The Pharisees were basically inventing loopholes around God's law. And so they would make these different oaths, them and their friends, but then they would create these sort of loopholes, these escape hatches, so that if they got stuck, they could say, no, we've still kept the law. So they'd say to people, listen, if you make an oath on the temple, it's sort of like you crossed your fingers. You didn't really have to keep it. Which is why in Matthew 5, Jesus tells his community, his people, I'm telling you, stop making oaths. He says, just let your yes be yes and your no be no. Do not swear by heaven or by anything. Because the practice of the day was for religious people to make a loophole out of keeping God's commands. Religion keeps God's commands but hates them. Why would you create a loophole in a law? It's because deep down, it's a burden to you. You hate them, but you keep them. You see, when you're in the gospel, it's altogether different. In the scriptures, you read David saying in the Psalms, I love your law, for I delight in them. Or you hear John the Apostle say in 1 John, we keep God's commands, and his commands are not burdensome. So here's a question I got to ask you, because I asked myself, do you really love God's law? The truth is, for so many years of my life, I kept it, but I hated it. And all the while, I would secretly wish that he had never given it to me in the first place because they were weights, burdens to me. But in the gospel, it switches. Because I'm no longer obeying God to get his love. I already have his love through Jesus Christ. I've already been forgiven. I've already been received. I've already gotten an identity from him. And so now the gospel tells me the commandments are not sort of this dreary existence to walk through. The commandments are a response to God. It's like a bouquet of flowers that you give to someone who has already loved you. The commands are not weights to keep us down. They're wings to set us free, to help us to live life as we were meant to